Hello and welcome. Today I'd like to talk about Katie Kitamura's Intimacies. For those of you who don't know, Katie Kitamura is a Japanese American writer. And this book, Intimacies, is about an interpreter who has moved from New York to Hague. She's interpreting at the International Court. One of the most interesting features of this book is that the character remains nameless throughout the book. She's a woman who could be in her late 20s and she doesn't have a name. The story begins with just a conversation that the interpreter is having with us, the readers. The reason why the book is titled Intimacies is because it deals with two different categories of intimacies. Intimacies that we consciously develop, for instance, romantic intimacy, which we do see in this book, in the relationship that the interpreter shares with her lover Adrian. The other kind of intimacy is the one that we don't want, that develops unconsciously, involuntarily. The intimacy that develops, in the interpreter's case, through language, when she is interpreting for the accused at the International Court. The accused is a war criminal and a former president. These two intimacies go side by side, and it's one other strange feature which I thought reflected the reality of human interactions is how sometimes we find it so easy to read people who we actually have no intimate relationship with, and yet at the same time there are people who are so close to us, and at critical, crucial moments when we really want to know what they are thinking, we are unable to read them. They feel like a stranger to us. They seem foreign. They seem like a stranger to us, and we can't understand what they are thinking. Despite the fact, or maybe perhaps because of the fact, that we have an intimate relationship with them, it's precisely our intimacy which blinds us and prevents us from being able to read them, to pick up on their cues and understand what they are not saying. The intimacy that the interpreter develops with the former president is not one that she wanted. It's not one that she even anticipated. It developed through language because she was interpreting for him. And as she explains, I think in the second chapter itself, that interpretation is not just about communicating a set of words in another language to a third party. It's about conveying the meaning behind those words, communicating the humor, the irony, the sarcasm that the speaker intends to convey but can't because of the language barrier. And sometimes these emotions, these hidden sentiments, these undertones are very important to convey. It's important for these emotions to be on record during proceedings because the case that is being discussed, the situation that is on hand, is a very serious one. So in the process of communicating, in the process of interpreting for the former president, understanding does develop. Because to communicate to other people what the former president is saying, she has to understand him in the first place. And the reason why this relationship becomes intimate is because she has an understanding of him over and above the understanding of everybody else. That gives her more and a wider understanding of who he is as a person. And this is what develops that intimacy. And she's also talking about how this intimacy impacts her, how she feels when he's around. This book has many themes, and one of those is intimacy, of course. But another one of those is the idea of evil and how we perceive evil. With such honesty, the interpreter deals with these questions of how far can you objectively interpret for someone. At some point, when you are trying to understand what somebody is saying and trying to convey that to a third party, how long can you be objective? And where are the boundaries of objectivity? The idea of evil, the questions that she has about evil also arise because of the relationship that she has with former president. And this intimacy with him gives her a glimpse of what she thinks to be evil. But I'm not going to delve too much into it because that's open to interpretation, and I think everybody should have the freedom and the opportunity to read this book and form their own opinions about what her idea of evil is, and if she's even going down that path. These are some very crucial questions that the book raises, and it makes us think about these things. Another very intriguing aspect that this book brings forward is the idea of the difference between what is private and what is political. We don't realize the incursion or the invasion, the intrusion of the political into our private lives, but that is also something that this book has dealt with. And not only because the interpreter works at the International Court, which is a political scenario, it's a political institution, and therefore her career is in some way related to the geopolitical political happenings of the world, but also in the lives of those who don't have an association, who are not directly related to geopolitics. For instance, children who see violence, now that violence has been brought into their physical space, into their physical life. And all of this blurs the line between what is private and what is political, because now the political is a part of the private. And I found it very interesting because it's not something that she carried out or she portrayed very overtly. It was done very subtly, in a very realistic way, in the way that we live our lives and we don't realize that the political is intruding or invading into the private. And that was a turning point for me in the book, because the way the book begins is quite slow and quite at ease. It doesn't give away the fact that there is immense tension up ahead in the book. This book is quietly powerful. It takes a lot of time for the reader to realize why they are still continuing with it, because it seems like everything is so simple. Hague, as a city as well, is clean to a point of being sterile. And yet, there are nooks and corners, and if you look very closely, you can see the dirt, the grime, the dust. You can see that things are not as perfect as they seem to be. One of the reasons why I would recommend everybody to read this book, to pick this book up and give it a chance at least, is because usually books that deal with very heavy weighted subjects, such as anything that's remotely related to being political, or even a topic so weighted as intimacy, they tend to be very difficult to read. But Katie Kitamura's Intimacies isn't. It's a very simple read. The language is so beautiful, so lucid. The sentences are short, they are clear, and it's such a thin book. In such a compact form, Kitamura has addressed and she has raised so many questions. And she's not answered all of those questions because they're very complicated questions that I don't think it's possible for a single person to answer for everybody else. And I think that is why the interpreter has remained nameless, because in some sense she's supposed to represent and reflect everybody else, all of us. The emotions we feel, the way we navigate our private relationships, the way she goes through her relationship with Adrian, the questions that arise because Adrian is still married. He's estranged from his wife, but they are still married. And those are questions that any emotional, rational human being would ask themselves. And the way she conducts herself in her professional life, the thoughts that she has, the emotions that we feel, that she feels, are all reflective of the reality of our lives. The only difference is that she is an interpreter who lives in The Hague. Katie Kitamura's Intimacy is a quietly powerful book, as I said before. Its power is going to shock you and surprise you because it overwhelms you gradually. And you don't realize when the tension peaks and you are unable to put the book down, because it begins very easy, very comfortably, talking about her move to Hague, and then all of a sudden things just begin to spiral, and somehow you really want to know how she ends up, what she finally does, and what her reasons for doing that are. Because the narrative feel of the book is very different. Even though she's telling us what is happening in her life, there is a distance and there is a wall between the reader and the interpreter. And it's because not everything is imposed on the reader. For instance, most books have inverted commas when they're referring to conversations between two people. But here, you will never find an inverted comma. The conversations that the interpreter has with other characters are fused, are molded into introspections and the narration. But slowly we are able to distinguish what is an introspection from a conversation and what is for the narrator's benefit. If you're looking for a book that you can finish quickly, that is short, and yet something that is substantial enough that you will want to read it again, maybe in a week, in a month, in a year, something that you would actually want to possess, you'd want to revert to over and over again, this book is for you. Apparently, this was also one of Barack Obama's favorite 2021 reads, and it was also longlisted for the 2021 National Book Award in fiction. More than anything else, like any good book, Kitamura's Intimacies deals with changes in life brought by circumstances, and the fact that circumstances can cause people to change unimaginably. Because when she moves to The Hague, she doesn't expect any of this, and all of it happens. And it's a very different life from the one that she had thought that she would have. And when she moves to The Hague, she's confused, but by the end of the book, she has a clarity. It's a story of human behavior, human emotions, and life. There are some aspects of it which we might find difficult to relate to for those of us who've not seen actual violence. But I think we'll still be able to understand the story. What do you think? Is this book for you?